Joining me right now is Yap Heng Or. He is the Managing Director of Timuran Setia Industri, a distributor of hardware and building materials based out of the east coast of Malaysia. Now, Heng Or has been a Vistage member since 2014. Thank you so much, Heng Or, for joining me this morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Cynthia.
Well, I want to go back to the beginning when you founded Timuran Industri. That was nearly 2 decades ago. At that time, you had zero experience in the hardware industry. Talk to us about that decision, that leap of faith of starting something you do not know anything about.
Well, I suppose I have to look into the DNA actually, because my family, my grandfather, my father, my uncles, they were all in businesses. They were running their own businesses. So even from younger age, I had this urge, intention to start my own business one day. And of course, during those days when I was in employment, I suppose the dissatisfactions with the jobs, dissatisfaction with the pay and everything, spurred me come back to my intention and say, hey, why not I look for a business, whatever business that I can do. And just happened during that time, my buddy in Kelantan happened to be my classmate for 1 year. I was in Kelantan studying for 1 year, and he was in this hardware business as a salesperson for over 10 years. So he called me and said, if you're not pleased with your job, why not, both of us think about setting up a company. And my father at that time was with some friends manufacturing roofing tiles.
Right.
And East Coast is one of their weakest market. So I thought, hey, why not? Being still young, why not we take a leap? So that's how it came about. I decided, and then I quit the job and started the business. Quite blunt actually during that time, wasn't much, I didn't think too much about it actually.
Okay, so you were more of a, let's say, risk taker back then, just try something.
Yeah, I suppose I always have my father to support,
Right.
something to fall back on. So that gave me a lot of very bold at that time.
Do you feel like you're still a big risk taker? On how has your management strategy
Not
changed?
really, not now at this age. I rather go for something that is more stable. But still, I mean, business without risk is not a business. So to a certain extent, we still need to take some risk, but calculated risk.
Okay.
Yeah.
The hardware and building materials industry is quite a traditional one, and it has evolved over the years.
Yep.
Can you talk to us about that evolvement and the journey of your company 20 years ago and now?
Well, we started off wanted to be different. Okay, right from the onset, I applied to a few manufacturers to be their distributors. Reason being, I do not want to compete with all the hardware retailers. There's hundreds of them in Kelantan. I want to be ahead of them, above them. So distributor is one where I can gain price advantage.
Right.
But of course, it comes with the burden of having to service the manufacturer to drive the sales for them. But that's how we started. And also at the same time, I think TSI was the first one that started selling hardware from an air-conditioned and closed showroom during that time, 20 years ago in Kelantan. We were the first one who started it. Of course, as things progressed, we started e-commerce. We're opening up branches to cover most of the district in Kelantan and also Terengganu. I think e-commerce is something that we were forced to consider during, I think Alibaba came about and really rocked the retailers' world. And come MCO during the 2020, that is when we thought, e-commerce is something that we should try. And ever since that, I think TSI has become more digital and accessible to all the consumer nationwide actually at the moment.
I think you've pointed out MCO was a time where you saw a lot of people took on construction projects, like self-improvement projects for their home. And I think that's the shift, right? Consumers are becoming more direct to the product. How has your marketing or your strategy shifted back then when you were selling out of the shop and now focusing a lot more on the younger consumers, more tech savvy?
Before the MCO, actually my company has come to a plateau, the growth plateau for a few years, and we were kind of worried about it. And come MCO, we had all the time to sit down and pondering, where we go from here, our strength, our weaknesses, especially the consumers, how their behavior have changed and the age group, and the busy lifestyles of all the young generations. So I think e-commerce is something that we started it and proven to be quite successful, and we have getting customers coming from various states, even Kedah, Selangor, Johor, coming to us online, making their orders. And O2O is something that we're working on. From online, we're trying to bring them to offline, especially to get to know us better. Then we look into the new generations with their busy lifestyles, and hardware is something that is very messy if you go to a hardware shop. So I'm thinking, why can't we give them a nicer ambient, a better buying experience, for instance, and also what their pains are. For instance, when you want to paint a house, you really don't have the time to supervise and look for workers, and it's very difficult to look for workers. So that's where I think my company need to be more specialized. Rather than selling hundreds of items of hardware, we chose to specialize in a few areas like paint, roofing system, waterproofing, where specifically there's a big vacuum in East Coast, where there are not even 2 or 3 players in Kelantan specifically servicing that industry. So to me, I think that is a big area, a vacuum area for us to continue our next phase of growth. And I think we are getting positive response from the younger generations, homeowners, where they prefer a one-stop solution, where we will do the recommendations of the paint, the colors, and also finish the job for them. I think that is the trend that we're supposed to be looking at.
Yeah, definitely. Throughout your career, I wonder, what had been some of the biggest challenges that you have faced as an entrepreneur?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is when I quit my job.
That big risk you took.
Yeah, the job was well paid. I quit the job, and we started my business with 3,000 ringgit. That was a very, very small capital. And my boss at that time wanted me to stay back. And he offered me a 1 million package. A 1 million ringgit for you to stay on. And I turned that down. And there's a lot of what ifs in my mind at that time. What if I taken that 1 million? Why shouldn't I, why not I take the 1 million and then continue working rather than take the risk to be a business? Along the way, we face a lot of ups and downs in business. I think in hardware business especially, when we sell to contractors, developers, I think the credit terms is the biggest risk that we're facing. And at the same time, it affects badly on our cash flow, especially during the downtime, the year 2008, and then again we hit twice actually with that kind of problem.
Was there any time that you felt like giving up?
Well, my partner gave up. Yeah, my partner gave up, and he took the back seat, and I continue on with the business because we grew from 2-3 workers to 70 over workers, and we're talking about 60-70 families relying on us for their bread and butter. So it's not like we quit. What happened to them? So yeah, we continue on, but we changed our business model. Yeah, we open up more branches, and we do more retailing. Retailing is where you get cash sales every day. So at the moment we're at 50-50. 50% of our turnover comes from cash sales, and 50% come from distribution. That is a very healthy balance, and we're very comfortable at the moment, in terms of cash flow, because cash flow to me is much more important than profit. I always tell my people that cash flow is oxygen, and profit is food. You can go without food for a few days, but you can't go without oxygen. So MCO is a time where proven this to be very true. There are many companies who did not put a lot of emphasis, who did not careful with the cash flow, they went bust, right, during the MCO. During that time, Vistage asked a lot of questions. How long can you survive with your current cash flow? 6 months, 1 year, or 3 months? I think that question's been popping up in our Vistage group.
Earlier you mentioned like when you first started, there were a lot of what ifs, right? And I wonder at this point, do you still have lots of what ifs? And who do you go to? What do you do when you have all these questions?
Well, that is why I joined Vistage, and I'm still there after 10 years. Can you imagine Vistage in my group? There's so many groups in Vistage. I'm just one of the many groups. In my group, we have 15 business owners, and you have 15 brains, minds to help you to analyze on your issues, to scrutinize the issues, and they can be very critical with their questions, and they come up with a very honest solutions, suggestions and action plan. So we always say you're lonely at the top, right, as a boss, because everything you say, your staff will say yes. But in Vistage, it's a different story. They can really challenge your thoughts, and I find that it's very comfortable with them, and we become buddies. And I think we all from different business industry, different background, different gender, different generation. So you can gather a lot of different thoughts, and that helps a lot in my business. Especially, we have younger generation in our group, and they can tell you the new trends, what the youngsters like, what they hate about going to a hardware shop. So these are all very helpful. Yeah.
And when you have doubts and you face bad days, how do you overcome it? What do you do to detach and re-strategize, re-energize?
Well, I used to be very badly affected by bad days, but experience taught me that bad days come and go. So it's a matter of how you handle it. Normally, I would take a deep breath, sit down, and think through the problem, try to look for the gist of the problem, the core of the problem, and try to think of alternatives, all the options available to resolve the issue. And I would normally talk to my core group, my core group in my company, the team, the managers, and share with them the problem and see what. Normally the problems come from them. Anyway, problems are made by humans. So I will go back to them and say, okay, this problem has occurred. What do you think? What's your suggestion? How you want to resolve it? Rather than going berserk about it. I think the more sensible way is sometimes I take a break from it. I take a break.
Step back.
Step back. I leave the problem away, and I come back to the problem a few hours later. And normally the problem will be seen as less complicated after you took a break and come back and try to rethink about the problem. And of course, Vistage is my
sounding board.
My safety net. So I always fall back on that. I always call them out and say, look, I got a problem. Come, let's call a meeting.
So earlier you said something, of course, very interesting, is that how cash flow is most important for you. It comes first, then profit. So I do wonder, how do you measure success on a personal level? What is the metrics do you use to, as your guiding principle?
The turnover rate of my staff, that is one thing that I look at, and how many of my people who work with me over the years are fit to run on their own, to operate the business. Have I coached them enough? Have I sent them to training? Have they equipped themselves with the skill to run the business? And of course, on the personal level, one of the things is how many customers complain about us, right? And how many numbers of repeating customers come back to us. And of course, there's a lot of quantitative figures. We have to know the numbers, we have to know the margin, we have to know the profit. But those are the accountant's job. To me, I look more into qualitative, right? And especially on e-commerce, I always ask them what's the conversion rate, what is the average orders per customers.
Right.
I think that gives us more in-depth understanding, and especially when I go around looking at, talking to friends, I will pop a question and say, okay, do you know this brand? To test them and whether they can link this brand to my company, whether we have the local community brand awareness, and that is more important than figures, those kind of qualitative measurements.
So it may be too early to ask you this because you look fairly young. So, but have you thought about the legacy that you want to leave behind, or how Timuran Setia would look like in, say, the next 10, 15 years?
Well, at the moment, the next task for me as the managing director of the company is to what we call find our flying wheels. In flying wheels, where the wheels will continue to roll non-stop and gather strength, gather momentum. We are looking deep into our business model, and to find one that proven to be able to make the wheels roll. And with that, I think I'll see how my team members who've been with me all this while, some of them since the inceptions of my company, so whether they can continue on. And of course, we also continue to recruit talents. Yeah, we sign up with a few universities for the internship program, and I think that is very important. My intention is to allow these youngsters to join my company, understand the business model, and train them to be entrepreneur. Train them to have the skills to be an entrepreneur, and let them continue the spinning, the wheels, and they can have their own new ideas, new business model in future. I'm okay with that. Actually, I like to see youngsters coming in and take over from me. That is what I like to see.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Heng Or, for sharing your story. It's wonderful to hear the things that you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.